The medical bay of Sanctuary Prime was quiet except for the soft hum of alien machinery. Dr. Hyun walked down the white corridor, his forearms carrying data tablets that glowed with patient information. He had been a doctor for 300 years, treating beings from across the galaxy, but humans still confused him. Room 847 held his newest patient, a human female named Gina. She had arrived 2 days ago from a Terran military vessel, unconscious and dying. The scans showed void plague in her system, eating away at her cells like acid through paper. Dr. Hyun had seen this disease kill hundreds of beings. It never failed. It never showed mercy. He stopped outside her door and checked the readings one more time. Stage 4, advanced decay in major organs, molecular breakdown accelerating. The computer calculated her survival chance at exactly 2%. Dr. Hyun had learned long ago that 2% meant 0. The machines were just being polite. Inside the room, Gina was awake. This surprised him. Most patients with her level of infection stayed unconscious until the end. She sat propped up against pillows, her black hair pulled back, her brown eyes focused on a small device in her hands. She was reading something. Work documents, it looked like. A young human male sat beside her bed. Her brother, the record said. His name was Minho. His eyes were red from crying, but he was trying to smile for her. On the other side of the room stood a tall human in a dark military uniform. Commander Day, Gina's superior officer. His face showed nothing, but his hands were clenched tight behind his back. Dr. Hyun entered the room slowly. In his culture, doctors moved with care around the dying. It showed respect for the journey they were beginning. Gina looked up from her device. "Doctor, good morning." Her voice was steady, strong even. Dr. Hyun felt that familiar confusion that came with treating humans. She should be terrified. She should be weeping. She should be asking for drugs to make the pain stop. "Good morning, Specialist Gina," he said, using her military title as humans seemed to prefer. "I have your test results. Your family is here. I thought it best to discuss everything together." Minho stood up quickly. "Is there good news? Can you treat it?" Dr. Hyun's main hand gestured to the chairs. Humans needed to sit for bad news. He had learned this. "Please, let me explain what we found." Commander Day did not sit. He stood like a statue, waiting. Minho slowly lowered himself back into his chair. Gina set down her device and gave the doctor her full attention. Dr. Hyun began with the facts. He always began with facts. "You have void plague. It is a disease we have seen in 47 different species. It attacks at the molecular level, breaking down the bonds that hold your cells together. Stage 4 means it has spread throughout your body. Can you cure it?" Gina asked, her voice still steady. "We have tried for 200 years, Dr. Hyun said honestly. We have saved some patients in stage 1, a few in stage 2. No one has survived stage 4. The damage is too great. The spread is too fast." Minho made a sound like a wounded animal. Gina reached out and took his hand. "What's my survival rate?" she asked. "Give me the number," Dr. Hyun hesitated. Humans were strange about numbers. Some species wanted approximations. Humans wanted precision. 2%, he said. "The computer calculates a 2% chance of survival with maximum intervention." The room went silent. Minho began to cry quietly. Commander Day closed his eyes for a long moment. Dr. Hyun prepared himself for the questions that always came next. "How long do I have? Will it hurt? Can you make me comfortable?" But Gina asked something different. 2%, she repeated slowly as if tasting the words. Then she looked directly at Dr. Hyun with those sharp brown eyes. "So I have a 2% chance of survival. What am I supposed to do with the other 98%? Dr. Hyun blinked all 4 of his eyes in sequence. "I do not understand your question." "You said 2% chance to live," Gina explained patiently. "That means 98% chance to die. You're telling me what to do with the 2% by offering treatment. What do I do with the 98? Just wait?" The doctor felt confusion ripple through his mind. In 300 years, no patient had ever asked this. The 98% that is the probability of death. "You do not do anything with it. It simply is." Gina shook her head. "No, if I have any chance at all, then I'm not dead yet. The 98% is just time. Time I'm still alive. What do I do with that time?" Minho looked at his sister with wide eyes. "Gina, he's saying you're going to die." "I heard him," Gina said calmly. He said I have a 2% chance. That's not zero. That's not impossible. That's just really, really hard. She looked back at the doctor. What's the treatment plan for that 2%? Dr. Hyun pulled up his data tablets. This conversation had gone in a direction he never expected. The treatment would be experimental, multiple therapies combined, radiation to kill infected cells, chemical infusions to stop molecular breakdown, genetic therapy to repair damage. But Specialist Gina, you must understand, the pain would be extreme. Most beings cannot tolerate even one of these treatments. We would be combining all of them. And that gives me 2%? Gina asked. Yes. With all treatments, maximum effort, the computer calculates 2% survival. And without treatment, 0%. You would have perhaps 2 weeks. We could make you comfortable. Gina was quiet for a moment. She looked at her brother, then at her commander, then down at her own hands. Dr. Hyun waited. This was the moment most patients chose comfort, chose peace, chose to let go. I want the treatment, Gina said. All of it. Everything that gives me that 2%, Minho gasped. Gina, he said the pain would be extreme. He also said I might live, she replied. She looked at Dr. Hyun with absolute certainty. Doctor, I understand the odds. I understand it will hurt. But here's what you need to understand about humans. We don't accept fate. We never have. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We split atoms. We flew to our moon with computers less powerful than this. She held up her data device. We did all of that because someone said it was impossible and we said, watch us try. She sat up straighter in bed, ignoring the pain the movement caused. 2% isn't a death sentence to me, doctor. It's an invitation. It's a challenge. It's the universe saying, I dare you. She smiled, and it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a soldier going into battle. So yes, give me the treatment. Give me the pain. Give me everything. Because I'm going to take that 2% and I'm going to fight for it with everything I have. Dr. Hyun stood perfectly still. In 300 years, he had never heard anything like this. Around the galaxy, beings faced death with acceptance, with grace, with surrender to the natural order. But humans, it seemed, did not surrender. Commander Day finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. That's my soldier. Dr. Hyun looked at the data tablets in his hands, at the numbers that said this human would die, at the treatment plans that would cause agony beyond measure, at the 2% that might as well be zero. Then he looked at Gina's face and saw something that made him believe, just for a moment, that perhaps numbers did not tell the whole story. I will prepare the treatment room, he said quietly. We begin tomorrow. Gina nodded once, satisfied. Then she picked up her data device and went back to reading her work documents, as if she had not just chosen torture over peace. As Dr. Hyun left the room, he heard Minho whisper, Are you sure about this? And he heard Gina's simple reply, I'm sure I'm not going to die without trying everything first. The doctor walked back down the white corridor, his forearms trembling slightly. He would need to inform the medical council. They would not approve. They would call it cruel to give false hope. They would say 2% was essentially zero. But Dr. Hyun was starting to wonder if perhaps humans calculated probability differently than the rest of the galaxy. If perhaps they added something to the equation that his computers could not measure. Something called stubbornness, or maybe something called hope. News traveled fast on Sanctuary Prime. By evening, every doctor and nurse on the station had heard about the human in room 847 who chose pain over peace. They whispered about it in the corridors. They debated it in the break rooms. Some called it brave. Others called it foolish. Most just called it human. Velthar heard the story while analyzing mineral samples in his laboratory. He was a researcher, not a physician, but medical mysteries fascinated him. His species, the crystalline, lived for 500 years and thought in patterns. They studied everything, understood everything, or so they believed until humans arrived. Humans made no sense. Velthar left his laboratory and made his way to the medical records department. His crystalline body clicked softly against the floor as he walked, light refracting through him in rainbow patterns. He requested all files related to humanity. There were not many. Humans had only joined the galactic community 60 years ago. The files told an impossible story. 200 years ago, humans were killing each other with primitive nuclear weapons. They had barely left their own planet. The galaxy expected them to destroy themselves as most warlike species did, but they did not. Instead, they stopped fighting long enough to reach for the stars. Velthar read about human history with growing disbelief. A species that went from wooden sailing ships to space stations in just 500 years. A species that cured diseases their own bodies created. A species that looked at their moon and said, "We will go there," before they even had the technology to do it. Humans did not wait for permission. They did not wait for possibility. They simply decided what they wanted and threw themselves at it until reality bent. The medical files were even stranger. Human bodies were not impressive. They were fragile compared to most species. Weak bones, thin skin, simple immune systems. Yet humans survived injuries that should kill them. They recovered from diseases that ended other species. They lived through accidents that defied probability. The files called it luck. Velthar suspected it was something else. He found Minho in the station cafeteria, sitting alone with a cup of something hot. The young human looked exhausted, his eyes staring at nothing. Velthar approached slowly. Humans could be startled easily. "Excuse me," Velthar said, his voice like wind through crystal chimes. "You are Gina's brother, yes?" Minho looked up, unsurprised. Aliens had been staring at him all day. "Yes, can I help you?" "I am Velthar. I study species psychology. I hope this is not intrusive, but I am trying to understand your sister's choice. May I ask you some questions?" Minho gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Sure, not like I can sleep anyway." Velthar sat carefully. His body did not bend like flesh, so chairs were always awkward. "Your sister chose extreme pain for a small chance of survival. This confuses us. In most species, the instinct is to avoid suffering, to find peace at the end. Why do humans choose differently?" Minho took a sip of his drink. "You think we're weird?" "I think you are different," Velthar corrected. "Different is not weird. It is simply not yet understood." The young human smiled slightly. "You want to understand why Gina would rather hurt than die quietly?" "Yes." Minho was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Let me tell you a story. When Gina and I were kids, maybe 8 and 6 years old, we went hiking with our parents. Gina fell down a hill, broke her leg. Compound fracture, bone sticking out, the whole horrible thing." Velthar's internal structure shuddered at the image. "The nearest hospital was 5 miles away through rough terrain," Minho continued. "My parents wanted to call for emergency transport, but it would take an hour. You know what Gina said?" He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "She said, 'I can walk faster than that.' And she tried. 8 years old with a broken leg, she actually tried to walk." "That is illogical," Velthar said softly. "That's human," Minho replied. "We stopped her, obviously. My dad carried her, but that's who Gina is. That's who we are. We don't accept things just because they're true. We fight even when fighting is stupid, even when fighting makes things worse. We fight because not fighting feels like giving up, and giving up feels like dying." Velthar processed this. His species faced problems with logic and patience. Humans faced problems with action and stubbornness. But the pain she will experience. The treatment Dr. Hyun described. It will be beyond anything most beings can tolerate. "I know," Minho said quietly. His hands were shaking around his cup. "I know it's going to hurt her. I know she's probably going to die anyway. I know that 2% means almost nothing." He looked up at Velthar with wet eyes. "But she's right. 2% is better than 0. And if there's any chance, any possibility, any tiny window where she might live, then trying is better than not trying. Even if trying means suffering, especially if trying means suffering, because then at least she did something. She fought. She didn't just lay down and wait for death." Minho wiped his eyes roughly. "You want to know about humans? Here's what you need to know. We're terrified of dying. All of us, every single one. But we're more terrified of not trying, of giving up, of surrender. We'd rather go down fighting than live our last days in comfortable surrender." Velthar sat in silence, his crystalline mind working through this information. It was not logical. It was not efficient. By any mathematical measure, Gina was making the wrong choice. She was trading peaceful death for agonizing death with almost no chance of a different outcome. But there was something in Minho's words that resonated. Something about dignity, about choosing how you face the end, about making death work for its victory instead of accepting it as inevitable. "Tell me about human history," Velthar said. "I have read the files, but files do not explain. They only describe. Minho leaned back in his chair. What do you want to know? Everything that seems impossible but happened anyway. So Minho told him. He told him about early human explorers who sailed across oceans with no idea what was on the other side. About scientists who tested medicines on themselves because they could not wait for proper trials. About soldiers who held positions against impossible odds because retreat was not acceptable. About civilians who rebuilt cities after they were destroyed over and over, because giving up their home was worse than death. He told Velthar about Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth. Hundreds of humans had died trying to climb it. Bodies still littered the path to the summit, frozen forever in the thin air. And still every year more humans went to climb it, not because they had to, not because there was anything valuable at the top, simply because it was there, and someone said it could not be done. We have a saying, Minho explained. Those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those doing it. Velthar found himself fascinated. His species encountered problems and found solutions through careful analysis. Humans encountered problems and threw themselves at those problems repeatedly, until either the problem broke or they did. Has this approach not caused much death? Velthar asked. Oh, absolutely, Minho agreed. We've lost millions of people to this attitude. Probably billions throughout history. Explorers who died in unknown lands. Scientists killed by their own experiments. Soldiers who held the line when retreat was smarter. We are very good at getting ourselves killed. Then why continue? Because the ones who survive move us forward. Because every impossible thing humanity has accomplished came from someone saying, watch me try when everyone else said, you'll die. Because we'd rather lose people to bravery than lose our species to caution. Velthar understood then. It was not logical. It was not safe. But it was effective. Humans did not wait for evolution to make them stronger. They did not wait for technology to make things easier. They simply decided what they wanted and died trying to get it until someone succeeded. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was utterly insane. Your sister will probably die, Velthar said gently. I know, Minho whispered, but she'll die trying. And somehow that makes it better. Not good, not okay. Just better than the alternative. They sat together in silence for a while, the human and the crystalline being, both contemplating mortality in their own ways. Finally, Velthar stood. Thank you for helping me understand. I'm going to study this further. Your species is remarkable. We're really not, Minho said. We're just stubborn and too stupid to know when we're beaten. Velthar's body chimed with what might have been laughter. Perhaps stubbornness is its own form of intelligence. He left Minho in the cafeteria and returned to his laboratory. But instead of going back to his mineral samples, he opened a new research file. He titled it, On the Human Capacity for Defiance. Over the next few hours, he compiled everything he could find about human psychology, human history, human warfare, human medicine. Patterns emerged. Humans did not accept limitations. They did not respect impossibility. They treated low probability as personal insult. Where other species saw a locked door, humans saw a door that had not been kicked hard enough yet. Velthar wrote in his notes. Hypothesis. Humans possess a psychological trait that overrides survival instinct with goal-oriented stubbornness. This trait causes them to attempt impossible tasks. Statistically, most attempts fail, but enough succeed to advance the species significantly. In essence, humans use individual sacrifice to fuel collective progress. Each death. The treatment room was cold and white, filled with machines that hummed and beeped in rhythms that sounded almost alive. Dr. Hyun checked each device 3 times, his 4 hands moving with practiced precision. Everything had to be perfect. With only a 2% chance of success, there was no room for error. Gina sat on the medical bed in the center of the room, wearing a thin hospital gown. Her brother stood beside her, holding her hand so tightly his knuckles were white. Commander. Day stood near the door, his face carved from stone, watching everything. 2 other doctors had joined Dr. Hyun. One was a tall, thin being named Kes who specialized in radiation therapy. The other was Orna, a 4-eyed creature who understood genetic medicine better than anyone on the station. Both had argued against this treatment plan. Both had lost the argument. Now they were here to make sure it was done right, even though they believed it was wrong. Last chance to change your mind. Dr. Hyun said to Gina. He had to offer. His conscience demanded it. We can still choose palliative care. Comfort, peace. Gina shook her head. We've been through this, Doctor. Let's begin. Dr. Hyun touched a control panel. Restraints emerged from the bed, soft but strong, wrapping around Gina's wrists and ankles. She did not fight them. She understood why they were necessary. The pain would make her thrash. The pain would make her want to escape. The restraints would keep her safe from herself. The first treatment is radiation, Dr. Hyun explained, his voice gentle. It will target the infected cells throughout your body. It will feel like burning from the inside. We will give you pain medication, but it will not stop all the discomfort. Do you understand? I understand, Gina said. Her voice was steady, but her hand gripped Minho's tighter. You can still stop at any time, Doctor, Hyun reminded her. Just say the word and we end the treatment. I won't say it, Gina replied. Start whenever you're ready. Dr. Hyun looked at his colleagues. Kes moved to the radiation controls. Orna prepared the genetic therapy station. Dr. Hyun himself would manage the chemical infusions. They were about to do something no medical team had ever attempted. 3 different aggressive treatments, all at once, on a dying patient. It was madness. It was desperation. It was human. Beginning radiation treatment, Kes announced. His long fingers danced across the controls. Level 1 intensity. The machine above Gina's bed began to glow. Invisible radiation poured down, targeting the void plague that was eating her alive. For a moment, nothing happened. Gina lay still, breathing slowly. Then her eyes went wide. Her whole body went rigid. A sound came from her throat. Not quite a scream, but close. Heart rate increasing, Orna reported, watching the monitors. Blood pressure rising. Pain response significant. It's only level 1, Kes said quietly, looking at Gina with what might have been pity. We need to reach level 7. Minho made a choking sound. His sister was hurting. He could see it in every tense muscle, every shallow breath. Gina, you don't have to… Keep going, Gina gasped. Her teeth were clenched so hard they should have cracked. Don't stop. Don't you dare stop. Dr. Hyun nodded to Kes. The radiation increased. Gina screamed. It was not a human sound. It was the sound of agony given voice. It echoed off the white walls and seemed to shake the very air. Minho turned away, tears streaming down his face. Commander Day's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. He owed his soldier that much. To witness. To remember. Starting chemical infusion, Dr. Hyun said. His hands were steady, but his hearts were breaking. He activated the IV and medicine flooded into Gina's veins. Medicine that would attack the molecular bonds of the void plague. Medicine that would feel like acid in her blood. Gina's scream cut off as she stopped breathing. For 3 terrible seconds she could not draw air. Then she gasped, her whole body convulsing against the restraints, and the screaming started again, worse than before. Vital signs critical but stable, Orna reported. Her 4 eyes were wide with horror. How is she conscious? Most beings would have passed out by now. Humans have high pain tolerance, Dr. Hyun said, though he was beginning to wonder if that was true, or if Gina was simply refusing to let unconsciousness take her, refusing to surrender even to her own body's mercy. Genetic therapy ready, Orna said. Doctor, are you sure about this? All 3 treatments at once? The stress on her system? She asked for everything, Dr. Hyun said. We give her everything. The genetic therapy began. Microscopic machines entered Gina's bloodstream, traveling to damaged cells, rewriting genetic code on the fly. It was beautiful technology. It was also the most painful treatment known to modern medicine. It felt like every cell in the body was being taken apart and rebuilt, because that was exactly what was happening. Gina stopped screaming, not because the pain had stopped, but because she had no air left to scream with. Her eyes rolled back. Her body shook like she was being electrocuted. Blood vessels burst in her eyes, turning the whites red. Foam appeared at the corners of her mouth. She's seizing, Orna shouted. We need to stop. No, Commander Day said from his position by the door. His voice was hard as steel. She said don't stop. So we don't stop. She's dying, Orna argued. She's fighting, Day corrected. There's a difference. Dr. Hyun made a decision. He increased the pain medication, knowing it would not help much but needing to do something. Anything. His oath was to heal, not to torture, and right now he felt like a torturer. The treatment continued for 2 hours. 2 hours of agony that should have killed Gina 10 times over. 2 hours of watching a human being endure what should be unendurable. The medical staff worked in grim silence, monitoring, adjusting, keeping her alive while her body tried desperately to die. Finally, mercifully, it ended. The radiation stopped. The chemical infusion completed. The genetic therapy finished its first cycle. The machines powered down, their work done for the day. Gina lay on the bed, unconscious at last. Her body was covered in sweat. Her hospital gown was soaked through. Her vital signs were weak but present. She had survived day 1. Barely. Dr. Hyun removed the restraints with shaking hands. Minho collapsed into a chair, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Commander Day finally moved from his spot by the door, walking to Gina's bedside. He looked down at his soldier, this small human who had just endured hell because she refused to die quietly. She did well, Day said softly. She should not have had to do this at all. Doctor, Hyun replied, angry now. Angry at the disease, angry at the universe, angry at himself for agreeing to this. We tortured her. We just spent 2 hours torturing a dying woman. No, Day said, his voice still soft but firm. You spent 2 hours giving her what she asked for, a chance. That's all any soldier wants, a chance to fight. They moved Gina to a recovery room. She would sleep for hours, her body trying to repair the damage the treatment had caused while simultaneously trying to fight the disease. It was a war being fought at the cellular level, and nobody knew who was winning. Word of the treatment spread through Sanctuary Prime like wildfire. Medical staff who had not been in the room heard about it from those who were. They heard about the screaming, about the convulsions, about the human who endured torture for a 2% chance. Some called it bravery, some called it insanity. Most did not know what to call it. By evening, doctors and nurses began gathering outside Gina's recovery room. They did not speak. They just stood there, watching through the window as the small human slept. Some were curious, some were disturbed. All were changed by what they had witnessed. Velthar arrived at midnight, his crystalline body dim in the low light. He had heard about the treatment, about the screaming, about the pain. He had come to see for himself if Gina had survived. She had. She was sleeping, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Machines monitored her vital signs, showing numbers that were weak but improving. Against all probability, she was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. Dr. Hyun found Velthar outside the recovery room. The doctor had not left the medical bay all day. He could not. He felt responsible for what had happened even though Gina had chosen it. She survived day 1, Dr. Hyun said. How many more days? Velthar asked. 6 weeks of treatment. 5 days each week. Radiation, chemicals, genetic therapy. All of it over and over, giving her body time to heal between sessions but not enough time for the disease to recover. Dr. Hyun's voice was hollow. 6 weeks of what you heard about today. Velthar was silent for a long moment. I do not understand humans, he admitted. I am trying, I am studying. But I do not understand how a being chooses this. Neither do I, Dr. Hyun confessed. In 300 years of medicine, I have never seen anything like this. She should have told us to stop. She should have begged for mercy. Instead, she told us to continue. He looked at the sleeping human. What kind of species does this? What kind of mind can endure such agony and call it acceptable? The kind that crossed oceans in wooden boats, Velthar said, remembering his conversation with Minho. The kind that looks at impossible odds and says, "Watch me try." His body chimed softly. The kind that will either save themselves or die trying, with no middle ground. In her bed, Gina stirred slightly. Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, dreaming. Perhaps she was dreaming of home. Perhaps of victory. Perhaps simply of surviving another day. Week 6 began with Gina barely conscious. The treatments had taken everything from her. Her hair was gone, fallen out in clumps during week 3. Her skin was pale as paper, stretched tight over bones that showed too clearly. She had lost 20 pounds from a body that could not afford to lose 5. But her eyes, when they opened, still held that fierce determination that had started this whole impossible journey. Dr. Hyun reviewed her charts with growing dread. The void plague was still spreading, though slower now. The treatments were working, but not enough. Her body was fighting, but losing. The numbers had not changed. 2%. The same 2% they had started with 6 weeks ago. Except now Gina was dying faster. The treatments that were supposed to save her were also killing her. Her liver was failing. Her kidneys were operating at 40% capacity. Her heart showed irregular rhythms that made the monitors scream alerts at random hours. Her immune system, pushed beyond all limits, was collapsing. "We should stop," Dr. Kess said during the morning medical meeting. "She survived longer than anyone expected, but we're just prolonging the inevitable now. We should let her go peacefully." "She does not want peace," Dr. Hyun replied tiredly. "She wants to fight." "She cannot fight if she's dead," Orna pointed out. "And doctor, look at these numbers. She's going to die anyway. Today, tomorrow, maybe next week. But she will die. We're just making her suffer for nothing." Dr. Hyun knew they were right. The logical thing, the kind thing, was to stop, to give Gina comfort medications and let her slip away. 6 weeks of torture was enough. Nobody could ask for more. But Gina had not asked them to stop. Even yesterday, barely able to speak through cracked lips, she had whispered, "Continue," when he asked if she wanted to go on. "1 more week," Dr. Hyun said. "We promised her the full treatment cycle. 1 more week, and if there's no improvement, we stop." His colleagues were not happy, but they agreed. 1 more week of hell for a human who refused to surrender. In her room, Gina drifted between consciousness and something else. Not quite sleep. Not quite awake. A gray space where pain was the only constant. She could feel her body failing. Could feel systems shutting down one by one like lights going out in a building. She thought about giving up. The thought came often now, sweet and tempting. Just let go. Stop fighting. Except that she had tried her best and it was not enough. Nobody could say she had not fought hard enough, but every time the thought came, another thought followed. Not yet, not today. 1 more day. Just survive 1 more day. Minho visited every morning, though it broke him a little more each time. His sister looked like a ghost. Like she was already dead, but too stubborn to notice. He held her hand and told her about home, about their parents, about anything except how she looked. Commander Day visited every evening, bringing reports from the war front. Gina could barely focus on them anymore, but she tried. She listened as Day described troop movements, supply lines, enemy positions. She gave advice when she could, though her voice was so weak he had to lean close to hear. "There's a situation developing near New Busan," Dai said on the 5th day of week 6. "Intelligence suggests the Krell are planning something big, but we can't figure out what. 3 ships in orbit, but they're not attacking. They're just waiting." Gina tried to focus. New Busan, Krell ships, waiting. Her mind felt like it was moving through mud, but she forced it to work, to think, to be useful for something besides dying. "Supply depot," she whispered. "They're waiting for a supply convoy. 3 ships means they're planning to hit and run. Fast attack," Day frowned. "But we haven't scheduled any convoys to New Busan. Check. Back channels. Black market. The Krell have been hitting civilian transports." She had to pause every few words to breathe. Easy targets. "They're waiting for merchants." Day's eyes widened. "I'll check with intelligence." He squeezed her hand gently. "Rest now. You've done good." But Gina's mind was still working, pulling apart the problem even as her body fell apart. 3 ships waiting. New Busan was a colony world, mostly civilians. If the Krell hit a merchant convoy there, it would be a massacre. She fell asleep trying to solve a problem she did not have the strength to solve. On the 6th day of week 6, everything fell apart. The morning treatment began normally. Radiation first burning through her from the inside. Gina had stopped screaming weeks ago. She did not have the energy anymore. She just endured in silence, her body shaking, her mind retreating to somewhere the pain could not reach. Then the chemical infusion started, and something went wrong. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Dr. Hyun rushed to the monitors, his forearms flying across controls. "She's crashing," Orna shouted. Heart rate dropping. Blood pressure falling. "She's going into cardiac arrest." "Stabilize her," Dr. Hyun ordered, but even as he said it, he knew it was too late. Gina's heart had simply had enough. 6 weeks of torture, 6 weeks of chemicals and radiation and genetic therapy, 6 weeks of fighting a war her body could not win. It was done. The flatline sound filled the room, that horrible continuous beep that meant death. Minho, who had been waiting outside, heard the alarms and ran in. He saw his sister lying still, saw the flat line on the monitor, saw the doctors working frantically to restart her heart. "No," he whispered. No. "Gina, please!" Dr. Hyun worked with desperate precision. Chest compressions, medications, electric shocks to try to restart the heart, but nothing was working. Gina's heart stayed still. Her lungs did not move. Her brain activity dropped to nothing. For 3 minutes, Gina was clinically dead. Minho collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Commander Day, who had arrived when he heard the alarm, stood frozen. The medical staff worked on, but Dr. Hyun could see it in their faces. They had lost her, 6 weeks of agony, 6 weeks of fighting, and in the end, the 2% had been a lie. Dr. Hyun prepared to call the time of death. His hands moved to the control panel to stop the machines, to end the futile attempt at resurrection. Gina was gone. It was time to let her go. Then her heart beat, once, weak, barely a flutter. Everyone in the room froze. Another beat, stronger this time. "What?" Orna whispered, all 4 eyes fixed on the monitor. Gina's heart was restarting, on its own, without assistance, without medication, without electric shocks. It was simply starting again, as if it had decided death was not acceptable. Her lungs expanded, drawing air. Her brain activity spiked. Her eyes moved behind closed lids. "That's impossible," Dr. Kess breathed. "Hearts don't restart themselves. That's not how biology works." But Gina's heart did not care about how biology worked. It beat again, and again, and again, building strength with each contraction, pumping blood that should not be pumping, supporting life that should not exist. Dr. Hyun stared at the monitors in disbelief. He pulled up the cellular scans, needing to understand what was happening. What he saw made no sense. Gina's cells were changing, adapting. Her immune system, which had been collapsing, was rebuilding itself. But not the way it had been before. It was different now, stronger, more aggressive. Her T-cells were hunting down the void plague with coordinated precision that looked almost intelligent. "Her body is evolving," Velthar's voice came from the doorway. He had been observing as always, trying to understand. She pushed herself so far past normal limits that her biology had to adapt or die. So it adapted. Evolution doesn't happen in real time, Dr. Hun said, but he was watching it happen on the screen, watching human cells learn and change and become something more than they had been. Evolution happens under extreme pressure over many generations, Velthar corrected, but humans condense time. They force change. They refuse to wait for natural selection. His crystalline body hummed with excitement. This is not medicine. This is will-made biological. This is stubbornness at the cellular level. Gina's eyes opened. She looked around the room with unfocused vision, seeing the shocked faces, the crying brother, the amazed doctors. "Did I die?" she whispered. "Yes," Dr. Hyun said honestly. "For 3 minutes. Then you decided to live anyway." A tiny smile crossed Gina's cracked lips. "Told you. I wouldn't quit." Over the next 6 hours, the medical staff watched in amazement as Gina's body stabilized. Her vital signs improved. Her organ function increased. The scans showed her immune system attacking the void plague with devastating efficiency. The disease was in retreat, but it was not done. The void plague was adapting too, becoming more aggressive in response to the immune assault. Gina's body had become a battlefield, her cells and the disease locked in microscopic combat. She could still die. Orna said quietly, "The plague is fighting back. Even with her immune system adapting, the outcome is uncertain." "How long?" Commander Day asked. Dr. Hyun studied the scans. 3 days. Maybe 4. Either her immune system will win or the plague will. There's nothing more we can do except wait. 3 days. After 6 weeks of torture after death itself, it came down to 3 days of waiting. Gina drifted in and out of consciousness, her body fighting a war she could not see. In her fever dreams, she was back at New Busan, watching Krell ships descend on helpless civilians. She tried to warn them, tried to help, but she could not move. On the second day, Commander Day brought news. You were right about New Busan. Intelligence confirmed a merchant convoy was scheduled. Recovery was slower than the disease had been. Gina spent 3 weeks in the medical bay, her body slowly remembering how to be healthy, how to eat without nausea, how to walk without falling, how to exist without pain as a constant companion. The news of her survival spread through Sanctuary Prime like a shockwave. Within days, it had spread to other stations, other planets, other species. The human who beat Void Plague. The human with a 2% chance who refused to die. The human who literally came back from death because she was too stubborn to stay gone. Doctors came from across the galaxy to study her, to take samples, to run tests, to try to understand how human biology had accomplished the impossible. Velthar coordinated the research, compiling data that would fill hundreds of research papers. Dr. Hyun visited Gina every day, monitoring her recovery, but also just talking. They had been through something together, doctor and patient, that had changed them both. I almost stopped the treatment, he admitted one afternoon. Week 6, day 5. I almost convinced myself that letting you go was the kind thing to do. Gina was sitting up in bed, eating real food for the first time in weeks. She looked like a skeleton with skin, but she was alive and improving. Why didn't you? Because you asked me not to, Dr. Hyun said simply. Because you said continue. Because every time I considered stopping, I remembered that you had chosen this. Not me, you. Would you do it again? Gina asked. If another patient asked for the same treatment. Dr. Hyun was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. What we did to you, what you did to yourself, it should not have worked. By all logic, by all medical understanding, you should have died. You did die, and somehow you came back. He looked at her with his alien eyes. I do not know if that was medicine or miracle. It was stubbornness, Gina said with a small smile. Pure human stubbornness. But Dr. Hyun's question haunted the medical community. Should they offer this treatment to other patients? Could other species even survive it? Would it work again? Or had Gina's survival been a unique event? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A patient in the terminal ward, a being named Rix from a species known for their calm acceptance of death, asked to speak with Gina. Dr. Hyun arranged the meeting, wheeling Gina down to the terminal ward in a wheelchair she hated but still needed. Rix was dying of the same void plague that had almost killed Gina. Stage 3, not as advanced but still terminal. He had 2 months to live, maybe 3. He had accepted this with the peace his species was known for, until he heard about Gina. They say you refused to die, Rix said. His voice was weak but curious. They say you chose pain over peace. I did, Gina confirmed. It hurt more than anything I've ever experienced. It almost killed me. Actually, it did kill me for 3 minutes. But I'm here now. I'm alive. Why? Rix asked. Why choose suffering when you could have had comfort? When death was almost certain anyway. Gina thought about her answer carefully. Because 2% isn't 0. Because I wanted to live more than I wanted comfort. Because giving up felt like dying twice. Once when I surrendered and once when my body stopped. She looked at the dying alien with understanding. But that's my answer. Your answer might be different. There's no shame in choosing peace. But you didn't, Rick said. You chose war. War against your own body, against probability, against logic. He was quiet for a moment. I have been thinking. My species accepts death because fighting seems pointless. Seems like denial of natural order. But you humans, you fight everything. Even death itself, we do, Gina agreed. For better or worse. I want to try, Rick said suddenly. Your treatment. I want to try. Dr. Hyun, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. Rix, you must understand. Gina's survival might have been unique to human biology. We don't know if your species can adapt the same way. You might endure all that suffering and still die. I might, Rix agreed. But I will die anyway if I do nothing. At least this way I fight. At least this way I try. He looked at Gina with something like hope in his eyes. You taught me that trying is better than accepting. That 2% is better than 0. Over the next week, 3 more terminal patients asked for the same treatment. A young female named Yuna from a species of peaceful herbivores, an old warrior named Tusk, who had survived 100 battles but was losing to disease, a child, barely 10 years old in human terms, whose parents begged Dr. Hyun to try anything. The Galactic Medical Council held an emergency meeting. The debate was fierce. Some argued that offering this treatment was cruel, giving false hope to dying patients. Others argued that denying it was playing God, taking away choice from beings who wanted to fight. Dr. Hyun found himself at the center of the argument, exhausted and confused. He had become a doctor to heal, not to torture, but Gina had taught him that healing sometimes required pain. That hope sometimes required suffering. Velthar presented his research to the council. The human treatment, as it was being called, had a unique effect on different species. Some species could adapt like Gina had, others could not. There was no way to predict who would survive until they tried. So we experiment on dying patients, one council member said with disgust. We torture them in the name of hope. No, Velthar corrected. They experiment on themselves. They choose this. We simply provide the tools. The council voted. By a narrow margin, they approved what they called aggressive intervention protocols for terminal patients who explicitly requested it. They called it AIP in the medical documents, but everyone else called it what it was, Terran Protocol, the human way, choosing pain over surrender. Dr. Hyun began treating the new patients with a heavy heart. Rix went first. The herbivore species Yuna belonged to went next. The old warrior Tusk followed. Each treatment was agony. Each patient screamed. Each day was a battle against biology and probability. Rix survived. His species, it turned out, had regenerative abilities that worked well with the aggressive therapy. He endured 4 weeks of treatment and came out the other side clean. Yuna did not survive. Her species could not adapt fast enough. She died on week 3, her body simply unable to keep fighting. Dr. Hyun held her hand as she passed, hating himself for giving her hope, for letting her suffer. But Yuna's parents thanked him. She died fighting, her father said. She died trying. That is better than dying in surrender. Thank you for giving her that chance. Tusk survived, barely. The old warrior had been through worse, he claimed, though Dr. Hyun doubted it. But Tusk's stubbornness, learned from a lifetime of battle, carried him through. The child did not survive. Too young, too weak, too fragile. Dr. Hyun wept after that death, questioning everything. What had he become? A healer or a torturer? Gina, now walking with a cane but recovering daily, found him in his office. She sat down across from him without asking. You're thinking about stopping, she said. 2 patients died, Dr. Hyun replied. 2 beings who could have died peacefully instead died in agony because I gave them hope. No, Gina corrected gently. 2 beings who chose to fight died fighting. That's different. You didn't give them hope. You gave them choice. You gave them a chance. What they did with that chance was their decision. The child was 10 years old, too young to make that decision. The parents made it. They chose to let their child fight. You think that was easy for them? You think they didn't know the risks? Gina leaned forward. Doctor, you're thinking about this wrong. You're not responsible for their deaths. The disease killed them. You just gave them a chance to fight back before it did. But the suffering was their choice. Every scream, every moment of pain, every terrible second was chosen. They could have stopped at any time. They didn't. Gina's voice was firm. You need to understand something about what you're doing. You're not playing God. You're not deciding who lives or dies. You're just opening a door that was always locked before. What people do when they see that open door is up to them. Dr. Hyun looked at this human who had changed his entire understanding of medicine. Your species is teaching the galaxy to be more human. I am not sure if that is good or bad. Neither am I, Gina admitted with a tired smile. But we're teaching the galaxy to try, to fight, to look at impossible odds and say maybe not. That can't be all bad. Over the next months, Sanctuary Prime became known across the galaxy as the place where dying patients went to fight back. Not all of them survived. The success rate was about 30%, much better than 2%, but still terrible by normal medical standards. But something had changed in the terminal ward. The quiet acceptance that had always filled it was gone. Now it was filled with determination, with hope, with beings who had chosen to go down fighting instead of going down quietly. Some species took to the aggressive treatment better than others. Some could not tolerate it at all, but the option existed now. The door was open, and patients kept choosing to walk through it, knowing full well what waited on the other side. Belthar completed his major research paper on the human capacity for defiance and its impact on galactic medical practice. It was published in every major medical journal across the galaxy. It became required reading at medical academies. It changed everything. The paper's conclusion was simple. Humans do not accept fate. They negotiate with it. This trait, while often leading to individual suffering, has